Howdy, guys. Jimmy Song here. Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Tech Talk, issue number 165. Don't go to North Korea, and other talking points from this past week from a technical perspective. As always, my newsletter goes out every week on Monday morning, and originally wasn't going to do this show today, but it turns out that my flight to Korea is delayed, so anyway, it's a good time to go and do the show and talk about some of the stuff and wait until my flight is basically around and I can do all that. All right. Anyway, once again, you can subscribe to this newsletter and read it on Monday morning, or you can watch the show. I don't know, however way you like to consume this news. Hopefully, you can find it useful and so on. Anyway, a few things to show before I get started. Little Bitcoin book is out on audiobook, and it is available on Audible. I believe it's like $5.99 if you go on Amazon. Yeah, audiobook is $5.99, so very cheap. It won't stay that number forever, so please note that. My book, Programming Bitcoin, is also available via Amazon for $40.99. It is being translated to Korean, it is translated to Korean, and I'll be in Korea during this week to do the book launch. My seminar is coming to Las Vegas February 20th and 21st in conjunction with Unconfiscatable. So it's going to be the 2 days before if you are interested in in doing learning more about Bitcoin and how the protocol works at sort of like the nuts and bolts bare metal level. This is the place to do it. And you can apply now and you will learn a lot of this stuff. That's about it for that. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the stories this week. I will be reading the Department of Justice complaint against Virgil Griffith, but let's start with Taproot, and this is the Google Colab Cloud, and essentially there's been a Taproot review being done by a lot of developers, and to aid in that, they've set up these notebooks to sort of help you as a developer to understand what's going on. Now this is a Jupyter Colab environment, and what you can do is I think run anyway. I think the way it works is that it will it's just like a Jupyter notebook, and you can do a lot of things. This one's more a test one. Leave. But there's a lot of other ones with like TabScript and stuff like that, Taptree, Schnorr signatures, and so on. So you can go and take a look at how all of this works. The actual signing and nonce creation and the signatures, the verification, how you're supposed to do it. The elliptic curve math is all there. You can print all of this stuff. You can actually do the exercises, like sign a message with Schnorr and so on. A lot of really good stuff. This actually looks very similar to my class. But the idea being you can learn a lot about this stuff without having to set up the entire environment. This is all sort of done with Bitcoin in the background and so on. So encourage you guys to take a look at that. If you are doing anything with doing this Taproot review and so on, then this is sort of a no-brainer to go and take a look at. All right, let's take a look at this story. This is from BitMEX, Bitcoin's initial block download. So essentially what BitMEX research did was they took a bunch of different Bitcoin's core software over the years, starting with 0.8.6 all the way to the newest release, which is 0.19.0.1. and taking each one and seeing how fast the initial block download time is. And basically they did an average of 3 attempts and so on. And you can clearly see that it's been improving. Now, the big difference I think between 12 and 13 was the introduction of SegWit. So I think but the big improvement here I think was headers first download and so on. But it's sort of an objective metric to show that this is indeed getting much better. And initial block download is absolutely critical to running your own node, and being able to do that quickly is very useful. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, yeah. It says that the big speed up was actually libsec. Huh. Interesting. All right. So that's something that you should definitely take a look at. Here's a paper that was written by Ling Ren from Urbana-Champaign, University of Illinois. But basically, it's doing an analysis of Nakamoto consensus, and it proves from a computer science perspective that it's actually it works. That it's not just in practice, but it's also in theory what makes it secure. Rebroadcasting transactions. This is talk by Amity Uttarwar, who's a chain code residency graduate, who was talking about transaction rebroadcasting, which you may have to do once in a while. And this is a topic for wallets. If it doesn't get out, or if the nodes you're connected to aren't rebroadcasting your transaction for some weird reason, this is something that really matters, because if your transaction doesn't make it out onto the network, miners have no real way to know about it, and that can be kind of a bad thing. You also don't want to necessarily compromise privacy by submitting to like a block explorer or something like that, at which point they have information about who you are and so on. So it's an interesting thing to think about. I encourage you guys to read the content of that as well. All right, Watchtower BIP. So this is Bolt 13 Watchtower protocol, and it's basically the entire idea of a Watchtower is necessary for Lightning because it allows you to punish anyone that's trying to cheat on a payment channel. That's what makes it trustless. By having a watchtower or multiple watchtowers be able to do the punishment transaction, you can have some limited amount of trust in several watchtowers that can sort of punish the cheater on your behalf. And the spec for this is finally out, which is great. And being able to run a watchtower and doing that as a viable business is something that I'm curious to see how that plays out. All right, why does Lightning matter? This is a great piece from SFox. I'm not really sure what they do, but basically they talk. This is a really good overview of Lightning, and this you can read this as a way to understand how Lightning works, why it's growing, why it's important, and all of the different ways in which you need that adoption in order to do a lot of the payment stuff that Lightning enables. So this is sort of a good first article if you don't know what Lightning is but do know what Bitcoin is. I encourage you guys to read it or to show it to your friends and so on. All right, so we'll get to the Department of Justice complaint in a minute. But this is the USA versus Virgil Griffith quick review. This is published by Crypto Law Review. If you're interested in this particular case, this is a very good overview of exactly what the complaint alleges and why it was so stupid and so on. But if you don't know the story, let me just summarize it real quick. Basically, Virgil Griffith is a member of the Ethereum Foundation and works for the Ethereum Foundation. went to North Korea in April of this year and gave a talk at the North Korean blockchain and cryptocurrency summit, something like that, or Pyongyang, I think it was. So he went there, gave a talk on blockchain and peace. Essentially, it was a talk geared towards showing North Koreans how to get around sanctions. Now, this might sound like almost noble, right? Like teaching people how to get around the sanctions that the evil imperialists have placed on them and so on. But, if you know anything about North Korea, you are not speaking to the peasants that are in the field, or most of them don't even really know what the internet is, and so on. You are speaking to party officials, people that are approved of by the government. These are not people that are going to use it in any sort of magnanimous way. They're going to do whatever the regime tells them to do. So, that's basically was his intent. He asked the State Department whether or not he could get a waiver so he can travel there. There's a U.S. State Department ban on travel to North Korea for U.S. citizens. They told him no. He got a visa from North Korea and went anyway. When he returned and he was, I think, at LAX, they basically arrested him before he could leave. He lives in Singapore, but he's a U.S. citizen. So, so that's the basic story, and we'll be going over the actual DOJ complaint. But yeah, this is an analysis of what happened. It's I think the big takeaway from this article is that it's a very easy win for the Department of Justice. For any sort of agency in the government, they are always looking for ways to look good to the public and to show that they're doing their job and so on. When you have somebody that's done something so ridiculously stupid and also, kind of contemptible because he's helping out the North Korean regime, it's a clear and easy win for them, and that's the big thing that I got out of this article. But we'll talk more about it when we get to the Department of Justice complaint. So I was gonna do the Twitter feed first, but let me just read this very quickly. Jeffrey S. Berman, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Let me up this thing so it's clearer. And so, all right. So John C. Dimmers, the Assistant Attorney General for National Security. John Brown, Assistant Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Counterintelligence Division. And William F. Sweeney, the Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office of the FBI, announced today the unsealing of a criminal complaint charging Virgil Griffith, a United States citizen, with violating the International Emergency Economic Powers Act (IEEPA) by traveling to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea (DPRK) or North Korea in order to deliver a presentation and technical advice on using cryptocurrency and blockchain technology to evade sanctions. Griffith was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport yesterday and will be presented in federal court in Los Angeles on Monday, December 2nd, which is today. All right, so a couple of things to notice here. Look at all of the names. This is what they are living for. All of these people, they've been working in government all their lives, or most likely, and getting their name out there, getting credit for something is usually very important to people like that. So the fact that the FBI is involved, the national security is involved, and New York Attorney General is involved. Everyone wants to share in this. This is how big of a win it is for those people. U.S. Attorney General Jeffrey S. Berman stated, as alleged, Virgil Griffith provided highly technical information to North Korea, knowing that this information could be used to help North Korea launder money and evade sanctions. And allegedly doing so, Griffith jeopardized the sanctions that both Congress and the president have enacted to place maximum pressure on North Korea's dangerous regime. So The thing that he's alleged to be doing is providing technical information. I've heard the argument. Well, it's all open anyway. I mean, there's a lot of information that you can get from the internet, but organizing it and delivering it is like another whole thing. I mean, like a lot of what I teach for programming blockchain is all available online, but people find it valuable to be taught something. So I don't understand that argument at all. All right, so that's the U.S. Attorney General for the Southern District of New York. Assistant Attorney General John Demers said, despite receiving warnings not to go, Griffith allegedly traveled to one of the United States' foremost adversaries, North Korea, where he taught his audience how to use blockchain technology to evade sanctions. By this complaint, we began the process of seeking justice for such conduct. So, I mean, this is the other Attorney General. So, it's pretty clear that they think the Sanctions Act was or the IEEPA was violated by Virgil, and I think it's pretty clearly a open and shut case. You can check his Twitter line on that. FBI Assistant Director in Charge William F. Sweeney Jr. said there are deliberate reasons sanctions have been levied on North Korea. The country and its leader pose a literal threat to our national security and that of our allies. Mr. Griffith allegedly traveled to North Korea without permission from the federal government and with knowledge that what he was doing was against the law. We cannot allow anyone to evade sanctions because the consequences of North Korea obtaining funding, technology, and information to further its desire to build nuclear weapons puts the world at risk. It's even more egregious that a U.S. citizen allegedly chose to aid our adversary. So the big thing for the FBI is that there's an aiding of U.S. citizen of North Korea by the U.S. citizen by a U.S. citizen, and that's what they really don't like. Anyway, these are all the just quotes that sort of summarize exactly what they think of Virgil Griffith and what he did. I don't agree with these sanctions. I think that's just sort of like a monetary imperialism. But regardless, he broke the law on this case, and he seemed to do it sort of almost flamboyantly, which not a good idea. According to the complaint unsealed today in Manhattan's federal court, pursuant to the IEEPA and Executive Order 13466, United States persons are prohibited from exporting any goods, services, or technology to the DPRK without a license from the Department of the Treasury Office of Foreign Asset Control, OFAC. In or about April 2019, Griffith traveled to the DPRK to attend and present at the Pyongyang Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Conference, the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference. Despite that, the U.S. Department of State had denied Griffith permission to travel to the DPRK. Griffith presented at the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference, knowing that doing so violated sanctions against the DPRK. At no time did Griffith obtain permission from the OFAC to provide goods, services, or technology to the DPRK. So the U.S. is saying he asked for permission, we denied him, and he went and did it anyway. Generally not a good idea. He can't even plead ignorance because they explicitly denied it. At the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference, Griffith and all other attendees discussed how the DPRK could use blockchain and cryptocurrency technology to launder money and evade sanctions. Griffith's presentation at the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference had been approved by DPRK officials and focused on, among other things, how blockchain technology, including a smart contract, could be used to benefit the DPRK. So, that's an interesting statement that it was approved by the DPRK. So some government official looked at his stuff beforehand and said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great. Let's teach that to the people at the conference," most of which were probably party attendees, at least the ones from North Korea. Griffith identified several DPRK cryptocurrency conference attendees who appeared to work for the North Korean government and who, during his presentation, asked Griffith specific questions about blockchain and cryptocurrency and prompted discussions on technical aspects of those technologies. So they were clearly government authorities in North Korea. I mean, I would suspect that that's the case for almost anything where foreigners are allowed in. And they asked specific questions about this technology. Not good, not good. After the DPRK cryptocurrency conference, Griffith began formulating plans to facilitate the exchange of cryptocurrency between the DPRK and South Korea, despite knowing that assisting such an exchange would violate sanctions against the DPRK. Griffith also encouraged other U.S. citizens to travel to North Korea, including to attend the same DPRK cryptocurrency conference the following year. Finally, Griffith announced his intention to renounce his U.S. citizenship and began researching how to purchase citizenship from other countries. I think the big thing here is that they're implying that he might want to be a spy for the North Koreans. I think that part's kind of ridiculous. But, encouraging, sort of working on behalf of the regime to get more technical expertise in there is, honestly, from the U.S. government's perspective, treason. You're showing them how to, do stuff that's against the U.S. government. And that's again, not very good. Virgil Griffith, 36, is a resident of Singapore and citizen of the United States. Griffith is charged with conspiring to violate the IEEPA, which carries a maximum term of 20 years in prison. The maximum potential sentence is prescribed by Congress and is provided here for informational purposes only, as any sentencing of the defendant will be determined by the judge. Mr. Berman praised the outstanding investigative work of the FBI and its New York field office counterintelligence division and thanked the Department of Justice's National Security Division counterintelligence and export control section for their assistance. The case is being handled by the office's Terrorism and International Narcotics Unit. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Kimberly Ravener, Michael K. Kraus, and Kyle A. Wershba are in charge of the case, with assistance from trial attorneys Christian Ford and Matthew J. McKenzie of the Counterintelligence and Export Control Section. The charge of the complaint is merely an accusation, and the defendant is presumed innocent unless proven guilty. All right, so all of those names, they are so happy to be on this thing because they're getting more press and prestige and all that stuff. And this is typical of any sort of like government press release where they thank just about anybody that's even remotely involved, so they can all share credit and go to Congress and ask for more money and so on. So my thoughts on this are, I think Virgil did a contemptible and ridiculously stupid thing. I've said this before, but helping out the Kim regime in any way, shape, or form, even it's minor, is absolutely contemptible, and that's exactly what it did. If you don't know much about North Korea, by the way, you should really read Laura Shin's tweet from yesterday, and let me just show that to you. And she's a fellow Korean American like me, and she knows a good deal of stuff about North Korea, as many of us Korean Americans do. But so let's where is the entire thing? Okay. All right, so here's the actual thread. Many of you seem to know little about North Korea. Here are some great books on it. And then after that, and here's some more with links to buy. And then here's the actual thread. Hey guys, I see a lot of misconceptions about North Korea underlying a lot of tweets on it, and I think it's important to understand what makes the country different from before you form an opinion on the Virgil situation. And she goes through like just how oppressive they are and what they've been doing. And I have no idea if Virgil knew all of this. I suspect that, if you look at his timeline, he's talking about North Korea before he gets there. So I suspect that he at least had an idea. If he didn't know all of these things about how much they oppress people and how if you go there, you're set up with a political handler, so you only talk to the people that they give you permission to talk to and so on. But this is a very informative thread. I think somebody asked for like a thread on Roll that you can take a look at. But yeah, I mean, it's really really kind of awful that he did that. At the same time, I think the sanctions are are kind of like the U.S. bullying everyone else to say, okay, well, don't trade with this guy. It's and they can do that because everyone's under the dollar standard, and any sort of monetary settlement that happens, they can shut anybody off, which is how the U.S. gets its power from a monetary perspective. So yeah, I mean, it's a crappy situation for Virgil. I'm not happy with North Korea. I'm not happy with the U.S. Department of Justice. I'm not happy with Virgil. I'm not happy with any of these people. And it's kind of a sad and infuriating situation at the same time because, one, this guy was being ridiculously ignorant and stupid. Two, what he did, whether he realizes it or not, is completely contemptible and reprehensible. Yet, I don't think he should go to prison. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let's take a look at some tweets that I did over the past week, and I'll explain some of them and maybe give you a little bit of a commentary on what's going on. All right, so that was the last one. I am going to be in Seoul this week. My flight, again, was supposed to be this morning. Not happening until tonight because of a delay. But I'm going to be at techfin.asia. If you are going to be in Korea, please come and find me and hang out at techfin.asia. The other event is On Off Mix. This is the book launch for my for the Korean translation of my book, and this website is in Korean. But yeah, I'll be giving a talk there and doing book signing and so on. All right, let's take a look at this tweet. Blockchain.info reminds me of Netscape. Early couldn't monetize very well. Now only valuable for the traffic. I suspect it'll get acquired for the very same reason, for not much money. And this like Netscape was like the company back in the mid 90s where people thought that was going to be the killer app, and it was, but just people could make like free versions and they didn't need it. And like the big reason why it got acquired by AOL was its homepage, and it's kind of and that's what blockchain.info seems like to me at this point. They had an early lead, they had wallets and stuff like that, and really like not as many people use it anymore, and instead they're they really only go there to check on transactions and so on. And I think that's the reason they'll get acquired, is for the traffic alone. I did do an interview with O'Reilly Media. This was back at Food Camp, which I had the pleasure to attend in 2019. It was in August. Take a look at it if you are interested. All right. Let's see. Ryan Selkis tweeted out, JFC, is the meme of Vitalik as a 19-year-old prodigy scamming people really still circulating? If we can't assume good faith by Vitalik, then this industry is in serious trouble. Well, I've never assumed good faith from Vitalik, and for good reason. He's been scamming people with quantum computers and all this other stuff. So I retweeted his with some commentary. He's right, and I couldn't be more excited. This industry is shitcoins. And basically, I think this is a good indicator that people are starting to wake up to the fact that altcoins are kind of pieces of crap. So that's what I'm hoping. All right, so this series of tweets got a lot of likes. Here's to the shitcoiners, the ICO peddlers, the blockchain apologists, the ones who organize conferences where all they do is sell a useless token. They're not fond of sound money and have no respect for anything that doesn't fit into the status quo. You can't argue with them, show them the flaws of their scheme, get them to understand incentives or complexity. About the only thing you can do is ignore them because they're out for attention. They scam people out of their money. And while some may see them as geniuses, we see scammers, because the people who are opportunistic enough to make money without taking the market or basic economics into account usually are. And this was obviously a way to, I was taking the quote for "here's to the misfits" and so on that Apple used, but, kind of turning it on its head, because I still can't believe people think Vitalik's a genius. The guy's not even a decent coder. And And his genius lies entirely in the marketing sphere and not anything technical. And it still annoys me to death. That's how people think. And he's definitely a scammer, and I will continue saying that because he's proven it. The properties of Bitcoin in order of importance is scarcity, then decentralization, and then finally its digital nature. In that sense, Bitcoin has more in common with gold than altcoins. And this is the graph that I drew. Decentralized, digital, and scarce. Bitcoin is all three. MP3s are decentralized and digital, like no one person controls MP3s, but you can infinitely copy it, so it's not scarce. Gold is decentralized and scarce, but it's not digital. If there is a digital version, then it's going to be centralized. Gift cards are digital and scarce. At least like there's no infinite amount of Amazon gift cards, or else they die, for example. And altcoins also belong in this area. It's kind of like gift cards, except it's to a store that hasn't opened yet and for a product that no one uses. Bitcoin is all three, and this is why I say Bitcoin's closer to gold than the other stuff. All right, this one is another retweet, quote retweet. You may hate Wall Street all you want, but there's one thing they are better at than the crypto industry. You never hear Diamond shit on BlankFi. They advocate for each other. They don't treat it as a zero-sum game. It's us against the world rather than us against each other. And this is my retweet. Not calling out bad behavior is sadly the norm in business, as each business has its own skeletons. Bitcoin is decentralized, so there are no skeletons. Bitcoin is not in the crypto industry. It's in the business of selling money. Shitcoins are in the scam business. So they need to be called out. And bad behavior, unfortunately, is not called out because they know it's... sometimes it is, but usually it's not, because then they get, anything unethical that they did comes to light and so on. All right, so this is my Thanksgiving tweet. By far my most popular tweet of this week. I'm thankful for Bitcoin Cash, which has shown conclusively that payments are not the killer app. Ethereum, which has shown complexity really is the enemy of security. USD, which continues to show how terribly unfair fiat money is. What are you thankful for? And Bitcoin Cash obviously has tried to do large blocks and so on, and they haven't been successful at all. They have no adoption. Their coin continues to go down. And really, they have to subsidize any sort of development on there with lots and lots of money. And that's going to run out at some point, and then we'll see a crash to zero. Ethereum, they've had lots and lots of bugs. People seem to not care that much about those bugs that cost them money, but if it doesn't happen to affect them. But that's the direction that Ethereum has gone in, is complexity, and they're not secure. US dollar, the more I learn about it, the more I realize just how much it's set up for, enriching the rich even more. All right, F-heads are spending more time talking about how the mean Bitcoin maximalists are criticizing them than they are actually defending their scam. Seems this is the new narrative being pushed by the Ethereum Politburo. And, obviously I'm taking a little bit of a dig and comparing them to communists who did have a Politburo. Politburo stands for Political Bureau that, does all of the marketing, and they're centralized. So this is definitely the sort of narrative that they've been trying to push, is that, we're all in the same industry. Why are we shooting each other? Blah, blah, blah. And the fact of the matter is we're not in the same industry. Bitcoin is in the industry of sound money. All of these other things are centralized token sales of, gift cards to things that don't exist or are not popular in the least. So, they're very different, and this decentralization is the big difference. And it's that's what I was trying to point out in that tweet. All right, so this is about Virgil Griffith. I have sympathy for the North Korean people. So what Virgil Griffith was doing was unconscionably ignorant at best, and a reprehensible and possibly murderous act of pride at worst. Why would you be aiding the worst regime in terms of human rights get more financial resources? And Alex Gladstein pretty much said the same thing. which I retweeted. But his voice, I think, has a little more gravitas in this because he is the CSO of the Human Rights Foundation. To be clear on my earlier tweet, I see the sanctions on North Korea as an example of monetary imperialism via dollar hegemony. Virgil Griffith did a vile thing helping the Kim regime, and his actions deserve our ridicule and disgust, but not imprisonment. And I pretty much said the same thing on this. Anyone else not buying much today? Seems stupid to spend money on goods that will not get much use immediately because you save 30%. Better to stack sats. And this was something I was experiencing on Black Friday. It's like, you know what? I really don't want to spend money on this. And I'm sure many of you Bitcoin holders had the same thing. Fiat money creates markets that lack the classical virtues: prudence, low time preference, temperance, anti-fragile, not getting squeezed, justice, cooperative and fair, fortitude, entrepreneurialism. Bitcoin fixes this. Essentially, the classical virtues of prudence, temperance, justice, fortitude, they come out in a normal market. In sort of the fiat money market, it seems people have high time preference. They're much more fragile. It's tilted towards the already rich, and there isn't as much entrepreneurialism. So that was the point of my tweet. Obviously not as popular, but that was the idea. With power comes responsibility. With freedom comes choices. Bitcoin gives you more of both over time. Use the time you're holding to improve on both, because we really are going to have a lot more freedom and a lot more power, and that's going to give us more choices and responsibility. Virgil Griffith would not have had the opportunity to go to North Korea if he wasn't involved at all in Ethereum or doing any of that stuff. So, he used his freedom and power very poorly, and he is where he is now for that reason. It looks like the no sympathy for the above won for the, who's the most sympathetic in that sad scenario. There aren't many proven business models in Bitcoin: exchanges, mining equipment, custody solutions, hardware wallets, merchant processing, conferences, media. This is a good thing. It means the value is being captured by you, the user, and not as much by some third party. And this is in contrast, I guess, to the every single ICO who are trying to capture value in some way. And they're failing at it because they don't understand markets, or they're just straight up scamming. But like all of these guys, they don't get recurring revenue except exchanges, and I think that'll be disrupted. And maybe merchant processing, and maybe conferences and media. But they're all kind of like one-time fees usually. I mean, custody, I guess, could be. All right, so most of them are. But I mean, there aren't that many good business models that have been tried. You have to instead of trying to sell them on a good or service directly related to Bitcoin, you're much better off selling a good or service that you happen to be good at. If you're an artist, creating art, if you're accountant doing accounting and so on, those are much more effective for sale than specifically Bitcoinish stuff. And that's a good thing, because that means the users are capturing most of that value. All right, easy peasy. I'm going to save that for next time, because I really think it's very interesting, and you're going to have addresses that, well, not really addresses, but accounts that look like BTC at 543.847.636.577, or you can have words in place of those numbers and so on. It's a really interesting proposal. I want to dig into it a little more next week. Bitcoin lets you vote with your wallet, which in turn lets you vote with your feet. These are the most honest and useful votes, unlike the ones at a booth. Voting with your wallet is putting your wealth in something, and that's a very effective vote. When you buy something, that's the market working, and that's how people have always voted in a market. And voting with your feet or relocating is impossible unless you can transfer your wealth with you, which is what a lot of Venezuelans are currently doing. Those are much more effective votes because they have skin in the game. Whereas the ones in a booth where you vote for somebody, not very effective at all. And this is why I don't vote. All right. Anyway, that is it. Let me see if there are any questions. Oh, bunch of them. How do you see the role of AI in blockchain? I don't. AI is just like sort of an algorithm. That's really all it is. I don't. I mean, there are algorithms in Bitcoin, but yeah, I don't see that. Let's see. How does Dennis Rodman get to North Korea so often without legal issue? I think he went before the Otto Wormer case, I think. He's the one that basically got killed in North Korea after he was stealing a propaganda poster to bring home. But yeah, after that, the State Department said there's nobody that's allowed to go. I think Rodman went before that. Before that, U.S. citizens were allowed to travel there, but after the executive order, after the Otto case, that's kind of what's happened. All right, book launch when? That's going to be, I think, Thursday evening in Seoul. All right. What is the most promising social and gaming experience built on BTC? And are you pro KYC on the collective level? No, I don't. I think know your customer laws are like government trying to enforce monetary control, and I don't like it. But as far as social and game experience built on BTC, I mean, you can do any sort of game and take Bitcoin. You can do any sort of social thing, media thing, and take Bitcoin. So, I mean, I haven't seen many that do, but because people don't want to spend Bitcoin, so I'd say nothing really. Let's see. That is about it. Anyway, let me shill a few things again. Let's see. We can close that one. Little Bitcoin book is available on Audible, and there's already a couple of reviews. Would love more reviews. That's always nice. We also have Programming Bitcoin available on Amazon. This book is also available in Korean. Little Bitcoin book, it's available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. It's also available in Spanish. Portuguese and Hindi should be coming out in the next week or two. And there are other ones in the works like Turkish, Arabic, Mandarin, Japanese, French, German, Dutch, I think Russian, and even Czech. So all of those are being worked on. So my programming blockchain course is February 2021. I will also be at techfin.asia. I think that starts on Thursday. I am speaking there, and I will also be at La BitConf in South America. This is Montevideo, and it's going to be pretty fun as well. I think I have a 20-minute speaking slot. Anyway, that is it for now. It's always fun like doing these shows. I'm trying to do them a little more often. I would love more feedback on what sort of content like you'd like to see from me. I've been trying to do different things to see if I'm hitting my audience with what they want. And you got to give the people what they want, as they say. So whatever it is that you'd like to see from me in terms of content, I'll try to accommodate. Please comment in the videos, and if you haven't already, please give it a like or a subscribe on the channel. So I can bring more of this content to you. I'm not doing this for money really. I'm doing this more for enhancing Bitcoin as much as I can. All right, so that's about it. Hope that helps you. This song is done.